Hello, everyone. This is the 216th episode of Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I interview German journalist Mr. Christian Prechtl as we discuss VfB Stuttgart during the decade of the 1980s. Mr. Prechtl has been a publicist, editor, certified PR consultant, and has 27 years of professional communications. He has also 25 years of blogging and columns for media partners, print and online. Welcome, Christian.
John, it's my pleasure.
So, can you introduce yourself and your trajectory into football?
I'm 56 years old. I go to VfB Stuttgart. We don't say VfB. We in Germany it's always VfB. Since 1977, my first match, when I remember right, was the second last match of the season, 76-77, when we beat Jan Regensburg 8-0 with 6 goals of Ottmar Hitzfeld. And well, it's always the same. You go to the club with your father when you are a little boy, and then you never change your team. That's something that, you keep it inside for the rest of your life. And well, yeah, I'm seeing VfB since then and following it. I was engaging in some club talks also and all the stuff and publicity, roughing up things with my columns from time to time. And I'm following it closely and I'm still following it. And well, yeah, today I'm a little bit sad because yesterday we lost in a very stupid match in Switzerland, in Basel. But well, that's life. You win and you lose. And now I'm happy to be here.
Let's go back in time. What was the status of Stuttgart in the West German Bundesliga landscape as we come to the decade of the 1980s?
In the late 70s, well, we played second Bundesliga, and then there was a man called Jürgen Sundermann. His nickname was Wundermann, the Wonder Man, the magician. He led us up to first Bundesliga again, and then we started, well, quite well. We finished fourth in the first year, and I think second in the second year in first Bundesliga, and then we became the big Stuttgart. We became a good team of first Bundesliga, and that started in the late 70s.
What was the impact of club president Gerhard Meyer Warfelder, who arrived at the club when the team was in the second division and would be around until the millennium with two Bundesliga titles along the way?
Well, Meyer Vorfelder, he was a great man. He was a politician also. Many people hate him. Others love him. I'm tending to, well, it's not love, but I think he was great. He was a character. He stood his ground. He didn't avoid any fighting and took some difficult decisions also, but he was one of the reasons that Stuttgart became the Stuttgart of now, of nowadays. Of course, he was, well, the biggest and most influential president of the club.
As we come to the beginning of the decade, what was the backbone of the team? The familiar faces.
I'm including the coach, Sundermann. And then the backbone was, I think they are famous until now, Karl-Heinz Förster, as we call it, Vorstopper, well, number 4 on his jersey, and Hansi Müller, number 10. Hermann Ohlicher, then the captain, when I remember it right. That's kind of the backbone. There was also the libero, Dragan Holzer. Ohlicher and Holzer were the only ones, the only experienced players, when I remember that right, in the era, and all the others, or many of the others, they didn't have money. It was a problem like later, like with Felix Magath, many years later, the club was, well, he wasn't broke, but there was not enough money to sign experienced players. So they were forced to use their own youth, which should be the usual thing, but people only do it when there's no money at all. People tend to buy other players instead of using their own youth. So Hansi Müller, Karl-Heinz Förster, Karl Allgöber, also those players, well, they were young, but they were the backbone of the era.
Of course, Karl-Heinz Forster's brother, Bernd Forster.
Yeah,
Uh, you have Bernd
also.
Martin, who would later join Bayern Munich.
Yeah,
And of course, Walter Kelch, who would
Stuttgart.
later join Strasbourg in France. For the longest time, Hansi Müller was looked upon as the jewel in the crown of Stuttgart in this era. What was his status at this point?
I personally know people who started football because of Hansi Müller, who became fans, supporters of VfB Stuttgart because of Hansi Müller, whose first jersey was the Hansi Müller. Personally, he was great. He was a great player and with the left foot and everything. Personally, I always preferred Bernd Schuster, although he wasn't playing in Stuttgart. But Hansi Müller, of course, he was a number 10, like in those days, number 10, very important. Well, you don't have to work that much for the defense. Half of the team is working for you, and a good eye, that you can do things that made football attractive. And Hansi Müller was that guy, and he was also kind of one of the first poster boys in football, I guess, because we had this little magazine, Bravo, it was called, and they had star posters, and many people had him hanging in their rooms.
Yeah, I do remember he was like one of the idols of that era. Yeah.
Yeah,
So as we come to the year 1980, you already mentioned Jürgen Sundermann. So
yeah,
he would be back, but he had left now
yeah,
for this
yeah.
for last season in the decade into the next decade. The team was under the management of Lothar Buchmann. Finished third in this 1970-80 season, and in fact, to reach the semifinals of the UEFA Cup. Were they at this point a good team, but perhaps missing that little extra to be a championship winning potential team?
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the the potential extra team. Well, yeah, they were good enough to play a good role in the Bundesliga. But the international matches, well, yeah, we were not good enough. Perhaps you need some experience with this, and it only comes from playing. So if you start and then, well, yeah, you have to pay for lacking experience. And I think that was one of the reasons we failed internationally then. Later we will talk about 1984. It was the same then when we were
Yeah.
champions.
And of course, this is the era of Breitnige at Bayern Munich, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and Paul Breitner. And at SV Hamburg, you have Hrubesch, Magath, Karls is that era. So
Yeah,
they're also very strong teams.
yeah.
Now, in the summer of 1980, West Germany won the 1980 Euros with Hansi Müller as part of the squad. But most importantly, the young Karl-Heinz Forster as a starter in defense. Was he perhaps the club's greatest talent at this point, along with Hansi Müller?
I guess so. I mean, he was seen the best defensive player in the world then. And some people said he was a brutal player or something, but I didn't see that. He wasn't an artist, okay, but he was really the best number four those years. Later we had another one, Kohler, and then there was also this competition, who's the better one, and I always favorized Karl-Heinz Förster. He was the best with four. Was he the best player of the club in this era? I mean, you could say that, yeah, you could say that. He was more effective than Hansi Müller. Hansi Müller was perhaps more famous because of, well, yeah, his status as poster boy and everything. But I think Karl-Heinz Förster was more important.
For the 1980-81 season, Stuttgart appointed a new manager, Jürgen Sundermann, returning home, and they also enrolled Karl Algover and the future national team manager, Joachim Lau. The team once again finished third and are eliminated in the UEFA Cup by another Bundesliga side, FC Köln. And you also have other arrivals like the Romanian Alexandru Satmarianu. The players who leave include the likes of Jörg Volkert, the veteran. Was the club consolidating its position near the top and starting to look upon as a heavyweight while still not having that potential to be able to win a title?
That's right. Exactly, that's right. You mentioned FC Köln UEFA Cup, which is a famous game until now because, well, not because we lost. We lost in, a prolongation in the second leg 4-1. In the first leg, we beat them 3-1. And there was this story about the yellow cards. Karl-Heinz Förster, he got a yellow card. And Bernd Förster took it for him, and the referee didn't notice it. And only later, of course, truth came out, and so they were not allowed to play the second leg in Cologne, and that was one of the reasons we lost. Imagine, and the Förster boys, the Försterbuben, we called them, and they were not regarded as criminals, but just the opposite. They were very correct guys, well educated and everything. And those two well-educated guys, they tried to cheat the referee, and that was it's funny, but those days it wasn't funny at all because we lost in the second leg, and that was that's actually it's a sad story because of this.
For the 1981-82 season, Stuttgart signed the striker Dieter Müller and the French striker Didier Six. However, the team struggled, crashing out of the first round in Europe and finishing at a disappointing ninth place in the Bundesliga. And we should also mention that the Austrian Ronald Hattenberger left the club. Dragan Holcher, the Yugoslavian defender, left the club, joined Schalke, as did Bernd Klotz and Joachim Lau. So a number of players left the team. But despite the arrivals of Müller and Six, why do you think the team struggled in the Bundesliga that season?
First of all, let me say that it's a big fun talking about all those old names and all players. Although you don't pronounce them right, of course, but that's not your fault. That's not your fault at all. Didier Six, Dieter Müller I think he marked 2 goals in the UEFA Cup against Cologne the year before. Perhaps that was the reason we signed him. He was a good player, and also Didier Six was a good player. I always liked the left-footed players. Didier Six, for example, he was French. He had strange hair. He was like an artist. He wanted to be treated as an artist also. And that was, I think it was one of the reasons we struggled a little bit in those days was because we weren't a team. We came from the Sunderman era, which, for him, it was very important that we developed some kind of a team spirit. And the big parts of this team spirit got lost. I think it already got lost under Buchmann. And then later, the players, they didn't fit together. We were on the team. We were, too many players. They did their own show, if you can call it like this. Also, I think it wasn't all love in the team. Many ego shooters. We had too many ego shooters in the team those days. That was the reason, in my opinion.
The disappointing season would cost Sunderman his post, and for the 1982-83 season, Helmut Benthaus was appointed to lead the club. There would be a clear improvement as the team finished third again, despite the transfer of Hansi Müller to Inter in Italy, the Serie A. And also, you have his namesake Dieter Müller joining Bordeaux in France. Bernd Martin joined Bayern Munich. He would be actually exchanged with Kurt Niedermayer. So Kurt Niedermayer would go in the opposite direction. You also have the Icelandic Asgeir Sigurvinsson arriving from Bayern Munich. Also, Thomas Kemp arrived from Duisburg.
Thomas Kempe, Thomas Kempe,
Kempe, sorry,
great, yeah.
And also the Romanian Alexandru Satmarianu also left the club. So there's some players leaving and coming and leaving, but of course the transfer of Hansi Müller at the time to the Serie A would have been a significant loss. So how do you think Benthaus turned things around with all the players leaving, all the stars leaving?
Well, it's great that we record this one day after the VfB Stuttgart played FC Basel, because Helmut Benthaus in those days, he came from FC Basel. Like many others after him, VfB Stuttgart, many players were signed from FC Basel. Helmut Benthaus, I always remember his yellow pullovers and pull-unders also. He was not a philosopher, but he was a fine man. He wanted the team to read books, I think, and perhaps I might mix it up with someone else, but didn't he suggest the players went to the opera also and listened to classical music and things? Well, he was a great man, and he rediscovered the team spirit, and he made almost everybody a better footballer, and it was great. He was a great man, and Perhaps, well, it's always difficult to say the most influential, who's the most influential. We had the same with Hansi Müller, two sentences early, but of course, he's at least one of the most influential coaches in the 80s in Stuttgart. Great man, great man. He will always be remembered with, well, yeah, with love.
Huh. Yeah. So, how crucial was the arrival of Asgir Sigurvinsson in the history of Stuttgart at a time when Icelandic successes were rare?
Asger Sigurvinsson, well, great man, great man. But it's always with the midfielders who roll down their socks, like Florian Wirtz nowadays, or Bayern also Sören Lerby after Sigurvinsson. There's always those players. You see them, and then he's a left foot also, and he was a great number 10 in Stuttgart. I think he wasn't very successful in Bayern, in
No.
Munich. But in Stuttgart, well, it must have been the connection, the combination, Benthaus, Sigurvinsson in some way. They fitted together, and Benthaus, he woke the artist. He woke him up as an artist, as a player. And I think until now, he's playing golf in Westmanier. I think he must be 70 something right now. But I know from Stuttgart people who go to Iceland, for example, to play golf or what, and they meet him until today. And funny thing in Reykjavik, when I've been to Reykjavik, we bought some clothes in the shop of his wife or sister. He's still present in Stuttgart. Great man.
Served the club for many, many years into the
Yeah.
next decade.
Something comes into my mind. You said Hans Müller went to Inter Milan. I guess that might have been the first transfer of a Bundesliga player which cost 1 million. I think Inter paid 1 million Deutschmarks for Hansi Müller. And it
Yeah.
might have been the first seven-digit transfer in Bundesliga.
It certainly was a high profile transfer at
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
Yeah. We come to the title winning season of 1983-84.
Yes,
You have players such as Didier Six leaving the club, but you have the arrival of a then relatively unknown Guido Buchwald, and you also have the Swedish striker Dan Corneliusson arriving from IFK Göteborg. It would be an exciting four-team horse race to the end, and in the end, Stuttgart would win the title on goal difference on the last day against SV Hamburg. And let's put things in perspective. Stuttgart were 2 points ahead on the last day and they had to face Hamburg. And I think Hamburg had to win like 5-0 or 6-0 to win the
exactly.
title. Yeah, so
Yeah,
Stuttgart were effectively champions going into this last match, but still, it's Hamburg and you never know what would happen.
I can still remember the second last match in Bremen. I still have on some of my, well, I still have the file of the radio conference that day and it's only a little piece, and I remember it now. It's da mal eine Mauer. I know that, and then there was the free kick, and Bodensky he couldn't hold it, and then Olicher made the goal, and it was 2-1. And it was such a great joy. And I think the coach Helmut Benthaus, he didn't believe it. He didn't realize it in the first moments. They had to explain it to him. Well, actually, Helmut, wir sind deutscher Meister. We are champions right now. Can you imagine that? And it was great. And the last match against Hamburg, I was in the stadium then. I think it was my first match alone in the stands in the Cannstatter Kurve, which was about 2 miles away from the pitch those days. The old stadiums. You couldn't see anything, and we lost. Jürgen Milewski, he made a goal for Hamburg. Well, but we didn't care. We didn't care at all. It was a great joy, and yeah, the season. We were talking about Helmut Benthaus and the team spirit and making the players better. I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. It wasn't that Stuttgart was so much better than all the other teams. We didn't finish with 10 points ahead or something. For Bundesliga, we were a good team. We played good football. Benthaus, he wanted to play, well, not too much defense. He wanted to see good football from his guys. And you could see that. I mean, Sigurd Winsson, we were talking about this. Dan Corneliusson, he was a good striker also. It was attractive football we were playing. That was the most important thing. And that was why many people liked us those days. So it might be that Stuttgart the glory of Stuttgart until today. It might also come from this year. It might come from when we went up to first Liga with Sundermann and then Benthaus, the first title. That was really important. And the season was, well, yeah, those days, not every stadium was sold out. Football was a different thing then. But in the end, there was a joy in the city. It wasn't like 54 when we were the wonder, when we became world champions in Bern. But in Stuttgart as well, it was a mini Bern. People were so happy. I can still remember that. Great times, great times.
Stuttgart, Hamburg, and Borussia Mönchengladbach ended up with 48 points and Bayern Munich with 47 points. So very close
I didn't
race.
remember that. Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for
Just to mention that summer after the 1984 Euros, Jupp Derval as the national team manager was obviously replaced by Franz Beckenbauer, but Helmut Benthaus was considered at one point
yeah,
as a replacement. And
yeah.
from this team, Helmut Roller, the goalkeeper, as a result of this season, he was part of the 1984 Euros team as the third goalkeeper. And of course, Guido Buchwald also made the national team, made the Euros team. So he had a very solid season. And of course, he'll be World Cup champion in 1990. You still have the Forster brothers in defense, Kurt Niedermeyer, Günther Schäfer, Karl Algover, Thomas Kempe, Ohliker you mentioned, Sigurd Vinson, the Swedish Dan Cornelsen, we mentioned Walter Kelsch and Peter Reichert. So
Peter
a
Reichert,
good,
yeah.
decent team.
Yeah.
So, for the 1984-85 season, you have players like Walter Kelsch leaving the club. He would join the French club Strasbourg. And Dan Cornelsen, after one season, he would join the Serie A and join Como. In fact, Hansi Müller would also join Como the same season. He would be loaned there. But you have the arrival of a certain Jürgen Klinsmann, who's still a bit rough from neighboring Stuttgart Kickers. You also have the Belgian striker Nico Claesen coming on board. But the team would finish in a disappointing 10th place. And at the end of the season, Benthaus would be on his way out. Why do you think the club failed to defend and build up on this title? Was it a lack of funds or were there other reasons?
Difficult question. So I wanted to add, for instance, that Helmut Benthaus only not became German coach because he didn't want to. At least that's as far as I know. He was asked to take the job and he said no. He preferred staying in Stuttgart. He would have been the German coach instead of Franz Beckenbauer. Imagine that. And I think he would have done a good job then. But okay, when we were champions, I think we lost. It was very sad that we lost the first round of Landesmeister of Pokal against Levski Spartak Sofia. We didn't lose, but it was two draws. And then, well, yeah, the goals, the away goals made it for them. And that was very, very sad because, well, we played such a good football and then it was, well, it was ugly. It was ugly losing like that. And I guess that wasn't good for the whole chemistry. Perhaps people thought, well, we are a great club now. We are German champions. We play such a good football. And then internationally, there comes Levski, Spartak, Sofia, and we lost. People noticed that, well, we aren't that big of a club. Still, we have to learn. And that was, well, it was a bad start. And then, okay, of course, they weren't strong enough to lead Bundesliga 5 years in a row. Until today, we've never been like FC Bayern or like the big club. We were shortly behind them. And so we weren't able. And as you mentioned, people left the club, others came, and it wasn't working out. That's all. I mean, it's not a big story. You can say it was this match or that match or this person or that person. The fire was gone at some point, and then, well, yeah, and then you strive like you end up in the middle of nowhere.
So, in retrospect, was the 1984 title, was that the extent of the squad, the end of an adventure, an end of a cycle, built upon a number of seasons of nearly getting there and finally winning it? And after this, they had reached their goal, and it was inevitable that maybe they would drop off a little.
You might say that, yeah. Cycle that started in 1976 with Jürgen Sundermann, and it ended in 1984 with the championship. And then, well, okay, we didn't go down after that. We were still a good team. So it's no drama at all. It's football. But after that, a second and the next cycle, the next era started, and we will talk about this later, I guess.
For the 1985-86 season, you have the Yugoslav striker Predrag Pasic joining from Sarajevo, as well as midfielder Jürgen Hartmann from Offenburger. You have Nico Claesen returning to Belgium, joining Standard Liège. Thomas Kempe joined Bochum, and Kurt Niedermayer joined Locarno. So there's a new manager. The Croatian Otto Baric is appointed. And like I mentioned, the transfer activity was rather light. Baric would be replaced in March 1986 by Willy Entenmann. There was somewhat of an improvement as the club finished fifth and reached the final of the German DFB Pokal, the German Cup, but they would lose to Bayern Munich 5-2 in the final. Nevertheless, they would qualify for Europe as Bayern Munich also won the Bundesliga title, and Stuttgart would qualify to the Cup Winners' Cup. Do you think there was a belief that the club would be back to their early decade form?
I can only remember that Otto Baric after Helmut Benthaus was like, well, a cultural shock. I mean, he was called Otto Maximale because he made funny speeches to the press, but I guess in the locker room and while on the training ground, he wasn't like the nicest man. Well, it didn't fit together from the beginning, I guess. As we said, Meyer Vorfelder might have been the greatest president of all times, but he also made some decisions that didn't end very successful. Otto Baric was one of them. Otto Baric also, until now, people think he said, "Kommt Frühling, kommt VfB." Spring is coming, Stuttgart is coming. And then they sacked him before spring. And Willy Entenmann, the eternal the eternal assistant coach, he was in charge then. And in March, in March, he took over, and then we ended fifth. And it was a successful year in the end. And Willy Entenmann was a good man. He's dead. That was so sad. He died far too early. He was a good man. He was a worker. The players liked him. And I think the players didn't like Otto Baric. I mean, how could you like Otto Baric? I can understand the players. And it might have been with Entenmann, it might have been the beginning of the next cycle, which, well, we were talking about later, which ended with Napoli or even in 1992 with the next championship.
In the summer of 1986, Stuttgart lost perhaps its symbol of the decade, Karl-Heinz Forster, who joined Olympique Marseille in France.
Yes,
His brother Bernd also retired that summer. Was this a significant loss as far as two historical figures of the decade?
of course. It was a historical loss. Well, mainly Karl-Heinz Förster. He was the icon those years. Well, later he contracted players and was like an agent, and it wasn't all good then. But when he left, yeah, that's the end of an era in Stuttgart, of course. I have to mention another player of these times, which could have been even bigger than him, in my opinion, which is Hans-Peter Makan. I'm not sure if you know him. He was a number five, I think. He was like the libero, and he only played 3 seasons and had two knee injuries, and he was injured twice, and so he had to finish his career before it really started. But he was, in my opinion, he was the player with the biggest potential. He could have been the next Beckenbauer. With Karl-Heinz Förster leaving the club, and there was no, well, Guido Buchwald was there then. He replaced him. Actually, he was also number four. So you can also say one era ends and the next cycle starts. You can also say, Förster, the end of Förster is the beginning, the real beginning of Buchwald. And so Stuttgart always with big number fours.
For the 1986-87 season, we have the arrivals of Michael Schroeder from Hamburg, Andreas Merkel from Stuttgart Kickers, significantly Ike Immel in goal from Borussia Dortmund, also Bertram Bierlorzer from Bayern
Bayer
Munich.
Lotze. Yeah.
Yeah, Bierlorzer. But you have the departure, of course, there's a significant departure of the Forster brothers. Michael Spies also leaves, joins Ulm. Peter Reichert joins Strasbourg, just like Kelsch. Egon Kurdes was appointed as a new manager, but again, he was powerless as the club finished 12th. This was their worst placing in the decade. Were the public kind of realistic at this point that maybe the team had become average after so many years of success?
You can't sign Egon Cordes and expect to have success. I mean, he was as a coach. I mean, I didn't know him personally. He died, but I think he was not a nice man. You can't work with such. He was the assistant of Lattek and others in Munich, Heinkes. I think he was a good assistant because the head coach could do his speeches and his kung fu, and he was the one looking after the players and organizing everything. That was okay for him, I guess. So good cop, bad cop schemes, but as a head coach, he's a fiasco. Okay, logically, we ended up 12th or something. No chemistry, nothing at all. What I wanted to add before, where you said Jürgen Klinsmann and Guido Buchwald came from Stuttgarter Kickers, and imagine who was coaching them in Stuttgarter Kickers. It was Jürgen Sundermann. When they came down from the Kickers up on the hill, and when they came down to Cannstatt, where we are, VfB, he was their coach in the Stuttgarter Kickers, which is a funny detail. Oh, but Egon Cordes, no, please don't go away. Please leave me alone with Egon Cordes. I think even he had a dog, a German Shepherd, and he trained the dog, and once the dog he attacked a journalist who was asking questions. I mean, it was like that, and he threw things on the journalists, and he was really not a nice man.
In the end, he lasted one season there.
Yeah.
For the 1987-88 season, we have Predrag Pasic joining Munich 1860, Andreas Müller joining Hanover. As far as the arrivals, you have Maurizio Gaudino arriving from Waldorf Mannheim. You also have Rainer Schutterl. How do you pronounce it? Schutterl?
Schütterle.
Schutterl, yeah.
Schütterle.
Schutterle, yeah.
Umlaut, always difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. He joined from Karlsruhe, and Fritz Walter.
Oh,
He
yes,
joined from Waldorf Mannheim as well.
as
And he
well.
would be one of the heroes of the 92 title. You have a new manager, the Dutchman Arie Hahn, one of the legends of Ajax of the 1970s. He was appointed as the new manager. He had managed Anderlecht the previous season. He would improve the side, and he would be the one who brought out the best out of Jurgen Klinsmann, who would become so good that he would be one of West Germany's starting strikers for the 1988 Euros held in West Germany. Stuttgart finished fourth and qualified for Europe. So, what were Hahn's innovations that had strengthened the side?
His most important innovation was that they had fun. He was a funny guy. He went out. He painted the town red. They saw him once or twice, and in those days, you didn't end up on all the headlines when you're seen slightly
Yeah.
drunk
Yeah,
somewhere.
no social media back then. So
Yeah. But of course, yeah, he was a great guy, and his whole spirit. I mean, he wasn't just a coach; he was like a legend. He played with Cruyff. I think Cruyff made him playing in the defense like Arie Hahn made Allgöwer playing in the defense, because in those days there was still Sigurd Winson, I guess, and others in the midfield. And I might be wrong, but I guess Arie Hahn said to Karl Allgöwer, "You play number 5. You are the libero." What can I say? Arie Hahn, it was always fun. It was good chemistry, and you could only read funny things and happy things. He was always with a smile on his face. It was a good aura around him. Of course, he was an expert, biggest and greatest players in the greatest teams. And didn't he mark in 78 in the World Cup when we played the Netherlands? He marked a goal and he almost killed the goalkeepers because he was a hard shooter. That was almost criminal. It was good vibrations in Stuttgart, and that's his. That's what he brought to us. I mean, after guys like Cordes, it's not that difficult, but he did a great job then.
For the 1988-89 season, there's some light transfer activity. You have Andreas Merkel leaving the club, joining Hamburg, Rolf Baumann joining Basel. You have the arrivals of the Schmaler brothers, Niels and Olaf, joined from Eintracht Braunschweig, as well as the Yugoslavian defender, well, Slovenian but Yugoslavian defender at the time, Sreko Katanec, who came from Partizan Belgrade.
Great guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I liked him very much, yeah.
He would only be one season at Stuttgart before making his way to the Serie A, but what a season for him. For this season, 1988-89, Stuttgart would have its best run in Europe in its history, as they would reach the final of the UEFA Cup, losing to Diego Maradona's Napoli. And in the Bundesliga, Stuttgart maintained its high placing by finishing fifth. Were the club slowly getting to a prominent position at this point with Han and this run in Europe?
Some players you mentioned, I don't even know. And others make me smile and feel good. It's very funny. And well, talking about Diego Maradona in Napoli, 89, it still makes me nervous. Of course, I was there. And it's still one of the three most iconic matches in the club history. And the referee was a criminal, of course, but that's another thing. Diego Maradona, I think there are two video clips until today. Maradona warming up in Munich in some match.
That's right. Yeah, it was like just before in the semifinals, in fact. Yeah. I think
And
April 19. Yeah, he was playing
and
to
they put Life is Life.
Life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They put this music. I hate the song, but in combination with Diego warming up, it's even that song is great. He did similar thing in Stuttgart. I went with my father. I still can't understand why my mother didn't go, and I was allowed to go to that match. But it was so difficult to get tickets, to get entrances, and everybody was like with open mouth staring at Diego warming up before the match. And then Jürgen Hartmann, you mentioned Jürgen Hartmann. He had to cover him, and he did a great job. Jürgen Hartmann, I mean, it's still like a meme. Today it would be a meme. Nowadays, Jürgen Hartmann silencing Diego Maradona in this match. Well, not completely, but a little bit. Although we lost, and although Germanakos or something was the name of the referee, who was set to, he started building a big house after the final, which might have been financed by Mochi. I think he was called
Luciano Mochi.
Luciano Mochi, yeah. After the finals. And well, in Stuttgart, we are sure until today, we are very sure that we are paid the referee. So we lost, but still, it is such great memories, such great memories.
So as we come to the end of the decade, Stuttgart could no longer hold on to Klinsmann, as the Serie A was the richest league in the world. Just like Hansi Müller 7 years earlier, he signed for Inter to join his compatriots Lothar Matthäus and Andreas Brehme. How was his loss viewed at the time?
Klinsmann made the goal of the year in Germany against FC Bayern with I don't know the word, a Fallrückzieher.
Overhead kick.
Overhead kick, yeah. I was also there. I remember it. Well, yes, of course, Klinsmann. With 19 goals, he was top goal getter in the Bundesliga with only 19 goals. I think later on, there was Jörn Andersen or someone with 17, which is embarrassing. With only 17 or 19 goals being the best goalkeeper. I mean, nowadays, Kane or Lewandowski years ago with almost 40 goals. Quite embarrassing. But Jürgen Klinsmann, of course, well, Look at him, like he's running like a young horse and stumbling also, and with the blonde hair. The Argentinians had Claudio Canilla, El Hijo del Viento or something was his nickname. And those players, they are, yeah, everybody sees them. They are attractive players. Of course, you can't replace him. And still, after he left for Inter, we didn't fall or something. It wasn't the end of everything, the end of all days. There's always a next match. The future was bright still, even after Klinsmann.
In the fall of 1989, Ari Hahn leaves his post. Klinsmann has left his post, so Willy Entenmann is the new manager. Other players who left included Rainer Schutterell, who joined Karlsruhe, Michael Schroeder joined Hamburg. We already mentioned Klinsmann. Shreko Katanec also joined the Serie A, joined Sampdoria. The new arrivals included, in the fall of 1989, another Icelandic talent, Eyjolfur Sverrisson. He would join the club, as would Michael Franchek from Borussia Mönchengladbach, former international, and an exotic signing, the Argentinian Jose
Jose Maso.
Basualdo. So, what was the outlook for Stuttgart at the end of this decade, going into the new decade of 1990?
We were established as a team not only in the Bundesliga, but also, well, internationally. People knew Stuttgart from now on. Future could have been bright. Let's put it like this. Jolly Sverrisson, also very well. He was also a nice guy. Wasn't he later replacing Sigurd Winsson as national coach of Iceland? Something like that. Nice players, good guys in the team. We are approaching the 92, the season 91, 92. And well, yeah, we have 1990 with Germany unification and everything. That was wild days in football.
And the World Cup title, of course, yeah.
And the world, yeah, internationally, of course, the World Cup title, that was wild days in football. And Stuttgart was, well, we were amongst the biggest teams in Germany, and that was good times for Stuttgart, good memories.
So, on balance, how is Stuttgart's decade of the 1980s regarded? It seemed like there was an upward trajectory until the 1984 title, which in a way was a reference point for the subsequent slide.
Yeah, you can say, well, it's a trajectory starting from 76, ending in 89, and then you can divide it in two parts. First part is from standing to first Bundesliga to until the title in 84. And the second one, well, started afterwards, might end with 89, final with Diego Armando Maradona, or you can also extend it until the 92 title. The 80s as a decade is in the club history is very, very, very important because, well, yeah, it started, the new era in Stuttgart started then. Of course, it was very sad days when we were playing the second league in the 70s. Very sad days. I mean, even I was too young to remember it personally, but but not only my trajectory with the club started in 77, but also the whole thing, the Stuttgart as we are right now. You might say everything started then, and the 80s very, very important decade.
As far as the managers in this decade, besides Helmut Benthaus, which manager could be regarded as successful?
I don't want to make it too complex, but we should see Willy Entmann is an important man because he fixed the damage of Otto Baric and he let them play good football. Then we have Ari Hahn. I mean, you can say it was Benthaus and Hahn that were the most influential guys, and not mentioning Jürgen Sundermann only because his most important stage in Stuttgart was in the 70s, in the late 70s. But with Sundermann, everything started. Everything started with Sundermann, and then you have Sundermann, Benthaus, Hahn. That's the names I would put.
There were some excellent players, the Forster brothers, Sigurd Vinson, Buchwald, Algover, Hansi Müller, and Klinsmann. Who amongst these would be considered the most emblematic player of this era of the club? I would guess Karl-Heinz Forster. What do fans like you think?
It's difficult. You cannot just put one name. I mean, until today, Guido Buchwald, because world champion and because of he was nicknamed Diego. You know why? His match against Netherlands was great and everything. Well, he was a great player, and there are so many. I mean, you can say Karl-Heinz Förster and Guido Buchwald. They are the most the best players and internationally regarded the best players, but they are not like they were not good talkers. Let's put it like this. Buchwald even tried to get to win the presidency, and his stages as coach. He was successful in Japan, but this might be because he had good translators who made his speeches sound greater than they were. And then you have also players like Hansi Müller, the poster boy. You have Karl Allgöber. He was always like an icon because he was one of the few people that dared to contradict the president, Meyer Vorfelder. Meyer Vorfelder was seen like a right-wing politician, and Allgöber also always took the part of as a leftist, a social democrat or whatever, and that was also a great player. Klinsmann, of course, yeah, the most influential, the best player. I I don't even know if Karl-Heinz Förster or Guido Buchwald was the better four because one of them was world champion. The other one was in this team in '82, for example. That was the start of that footballers were seen as ugly millionaires, lying around in the pool, playing cards for lots of money, ugly hair, all of them. Not the most likable guys in football then. Karl-Heinz Förster, of course, was not a part of them, as far as I remember. He was the brave, quiet one. But I'm not even sure if to put Förster or Buchwald. I cannot answer this question. I refuse answering this question. Sorry for that.
In hindsight, what mistakes were made in the post 1984 title seasons?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we are not the first and won't be the last club in the world of football that doesn't repeat the title. After the title, well, yeah, the tension, you lose tension, you lose track. Perhaps you might get a little bit arrogant. Of course, little bit of a difficulty is to say why Benthaus couldn't succeed another year. Why he lost his aura or what? Because he still was a nice man. He didn't seem to have changed at all. But some players leaving and others, I cannot put it on two or three really important points. I don't know. It's like normal. It's like the usual business. You win the title, and afterwards, you make yourself, you're starting to make yourself comfortable, and then you're losing track. The others don't sleep, and then it's like one cliche, hunting the others. We came from the dark, and we overtook them all, and we won the league, and then the others were hunting us
I
like
think it's
this.
also fair to say they did not have the financial strength of Bayern Munich, who could strengthen after winning a league title, or even SV Hamburg, let's say until in '83, who would strengthen the side season after season. So Stuttgart just was financially not in the same level, perhaps.
Yeah, and they didn't want to become the same. We had the guys leading the club then. Ulrich Schäfer is one of them. He was always later Ulrich Ruf. That's like they didn't want to spend that much money. That's like the
Yeah.
Swabian, the cliche of the Swabian. You keep your money together and you don't spend it, and you don't talk about it. There wasn't really well the ambition of getting to the next level. Next level would have been Bayern, and I think it's not, well, yeah, we didn't make it. And later on, we had another chance in the '90s, but we didn't make it again.
So I imagine the status of the club really didn't change during the decade. They were always seen as a stable Bundesliga outfit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Stable and, well, yeah, we were set to play good football. And that came back years later. The young, wild guys.
So is this late 1970s, early 1980s considered to be the best era of the club?
You're only putting me into difficulties with every question right now. As far as I remember, when we went up to first Bundesliga, that was one of the best years, 2 years, because we were playing good football. We were successful. We were fourth, finishing up fourth, and then second, and it ended up with a championship. That was, well, that might have been the best years. Stadium wasn't sold out every time, and was the old stadium, as we mentioned. You were 2 miles away from the pitch. It wasn't that big multi-billion business football, and you might tend to say, "Oh, those times, it was so good." I guess it was fun, and I not only my career as a Stuttgart supporter started then, so it's very good memories. You might say it was the best years, yeah. You might say that.
In closing, how do club historians and fans look back at this decade of ups and downs of the 1980s?
Well, we mentioned that for several times. It was the start of the new era, the new Stuttgart. Stuttgart became the Stuttgart of nowadays in the 80s. Everything started, everything. In the old history of the club in the 50s or something, that's another thing also we were seeing then, but that's too far away. In the modern times, let's put it like this, the era of the 80s and the late 70s is, I would say, the most influential one.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Christian, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on football history. Thank you.
It was a great pleasure taking part in this huge project, Sean, and I will follow you closely.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. Okay, bye bye.